Good morning. It's the 13th of August 2024. The UK government's intention to ban internal combustion engine cars. They removed the incentive on them in 2021. The Climate Change Act in the UK is based on California's model, but California allows plug-in hybrids. It allows plug-in hybrids and it has incentives as well. The UK gives you no incentive, just a big stick, and only all electric vehicles, full stop. All electric vehicles, full stop. No such thing as hybrids or anything else. Now, UK law requires car makers to sell increasing amounts of electric vehicles from 2024, hitting 80% in 2030. From 2024, that's this year, hitting 80% in 2030. ZEVs, that's zero emission vehicles, equals no emission at the tailpipe, no emissions at the exhaust pipe, plus a driving range of 100 miles with the World Test Cycle System. It's WLTP. Now, battery warranty has to be 8 years. Battery warranty has to be 8 years. I repeat myself for clarity, or 100,000. Now, that's miles in the UK, or 100,000 miles. I'll have to check further if it's kilometres, but I'm nearly sure it's miles. I'll post underneath. If battery falls below 70% capacity in 8 years, a replacement must be offered. And that'll break car makers. But that's the law they have. My job is to tell you the law. It sets limits on the maximum percentage of new zero emission cars each manufacturer can sell. So it limits the amount of traditional cars, and that's going to make the manufacture of our ordinary cars uneconomic, and effectively it's a tool to destroy the car makers again. And this is what I say. People say, oh, that'll never happen. Why would car makers continue to make your Toyotas and your Volkswagens and your Nissans if they know they're only going to be able to sell a quarter of what they used to sell? How are they going to keep their staff going? Now, 22. Now, here's the target. Here is the law. 22% in 2024. 28% in 2025, 33%, that's the zero emission vehicles in 2026, 38% in 2027, 52% in 2008, 66% in 2029, 28. In every case here now, folks, this is 2028. So go over it again. 22% in 2024, 26 and 25, 33 in 2026, 38 in 2027, 52 in 2028, 66% in 2029, and 80% in 2030. Okay? Now, 84% in 2031, 88% in 2032, 92% in 2033, 96% in 2034, and in 2035, 100% of all vehicles sold must be a fully electric vehicle. Now, the EU has a fleet average thing where businesses with fleets have to have a certain average number of zero emission cars. That's the situation for now in the EU and in Ireland, but that will change. Don't you worry about that. When they get the British thing rolled out, we'll be following them with our Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Labour, Sinn Féin, Green Party, and all of the people before puberty. They'll soon take the cars off you. Don't you worry about that. Now, Great Britain only. It's not in Northern Ireland as yet. However, it's expected that the very same legislation will be adopted in Northern Ireland as the Assembly is up and running. They want to leave it for the Assembly to do. So there's no indication of any change in Northern Ireland. That's something to watch for. Now, there is a system where makers can bank and they can borrow. So I don't fully understand this, but it's 75% of where the mandate is 22%, 50% in 2025, and 25% in 2026. So there's a type of a trading thing there. But as I understand it, if they make a certain amount of EVs, they can trade off. They can say, well, we sold them many, so we can allow a little bit of a reduction for the internal combustion engines because we sold so many. It's only a kind of a scam of a thing, in my opinion. This year, car makers need 5.5%. This year, car makers need 5.5% of its sales in 2024. So 5.5% of cars in the UK need to be electric this year to keep up with it, even with all the different calculations and everything else. Now, so figures agreed in 2021, apparently they agreed figures with car makers. It locks them in for 3 years. And here's the thing, I've researched this fairly well, folks. I've watched a number of commentators. I'm not 100% sure, and I'm open to anyone to post underneath. The fine if you sell one car, one diesel or petrol car above your limit is £15,000. £15,000. And I also see where some of the very, very expensive British cars and other very, very, very expensive cars, these would be for billionaires, really, really top of the range cars. The makers are planning to pay the £15,000, this is pound sterling, pound fine. So they're planning to pay the £15,000 fine and load it on to the wealthy people. Now, this is what the government thinks of you and me and the ordinary working man and woman. That's what they expect. They know the ordinary person won't be able to afford this. Now, makers, now there are exemptions if you have sell less than 2,500 zero emission vehicles. If you sell less than 2,500, so this would be car makers like Nissan and Ford and Toyota, but this would appear that it won't apply. Now, what I'm not able to tell you exactly right is will it be the sales yard, the garages that will have to enforce it? Well, no, I think now, and this is again, I think the makers. So Toyota will land in a lorry load of cars. And if they sell 2,500 in the UK, they're caught for this. It's only someone selling small amounts of very niche things. Now, if they sell lower than 1,000, they're exempted to the CO2 emissions thing as well. So if some manufacturer sells, we'd say 900 cars costing $1 million each, they're exempt. You see, that's my understanding of it. That means it's all for the big fella, of course. And of course, in the recent election in England, the ordinary British working man with the baggy trousers voted Labour to make sure he'll never get his head above the water, and the big fella will wipe the floor with him. That's the electoral system. That's how people vote in the UK. I'm working very hard here to change it in Ireland. So there's indications that they want the end of the internal combustion car by 2035. Now, it doesn't apply to vans. So if they're commercially registered vans, as my Volkswagen Caddy is, it doesn't apply. At the moment anyway, I can't say any more. Now, Joe Finnegan was on the radio this morning on Shannonside Northern Sound. He was pontificating away. He won't allow me on it, but that's all right. And there was some fella rang in from Cavan saying he had a van and he had to get rid of it, electric van, couldn't use it. And there was a person in down around the Drumcondra, Kingscourt, Shercock area, and he was doing work in Drogheda for housing and that, a good working man with a few people going up every day. And he bought an EV and he had to get rid of it too. He just couldn't get up and down in the one day. So that's just here nor there. Now, hopefully, folks, I've given you that thing. Richard Bruton was on the radio this morning and he wants more incentive. This fella's leaving politics. Will we ever see the end of him? And he's the fella wanted the ordinary person to invest their gratuity they got for working a lifetime into stupid windmills which make no money and pay no dividend and never paid anybody a halfpenny of their investment. Talk about corruption. He can't but know that. He must know what he's doing, and he must also know he was a minister, because I made several consultations. This is against the SEA directive. Now, for UK listeners listening, this is a plan or programme for energy, and it's a plan or programme for transport. Energy, transport. And this requires compliance with the SEA Directive Article 2 to 4, and in particular Article 3.2. Look up SEA Directive 2004. Here it is, 2001-42 EC. The government cannot make a plan or programme for any of the industries named without compliance with the directive, which means making an environmental report with public participation and the whole lot. And it's a very, very big job. Now, my understanding is that the SEA directive and the EIA directive were carried forward after Brexit into UK law. The only difference is that it's the British courts decide. Now, also there's a book by a Scottish, is he Gregory Campbell, I think is his name. There's a book on the SEA directive anyway. But I mean, it's that strict in England that they did an SEA to build a new town on a greenfield site. And they decided not to go ahead with the town after the change of government, and they had to do an SEA to get rid of it, turn it back to land. The SEA converts the use of the land. It takes that piece of area. So if you take the UK, England, Scotland and Wales, if you take the part that's covered, right, that's a government plan or programme for energy and transport. That has to have an assessment under the SEA Directive Article 3.2. So the first thing anyone in the UK should do is put in an access information request to the Prime Minister's office asking them for the environmental report, because the SEA has to have an environmental report, has to be done with public participation, and it has to it sets the framework for the EIA, etc. And this applies here. So I'm only telling anyone in England that's looking at this, it's amazing in a country with so much wealth, so many lawyers, that they can't even look at this, the SEA directive, which is already upheld by the European Court of Justice. You can quote the European Court of Justice in the UK because they continued the principle of the strategic environmental assessment. There is no strategic environmental assessment, cost-benefit analysis or anything on the United Kingdom's electric car or other green stuff, other green plans or programmes. They're breaking the law. You can block them by hitting them hard with that if you have the means to do it. In Ireland, an old farmer here, this fella, with cows, has knocked over €1 billion off the wind industry, hobbled them out every corner and put the people in the way of fighting them to such a degree that when we go into the Irish High Courts, the lawyers on all sides will not talk about the SEA because it's the name, it's the word that cannot speak. It's not allowed to be spoke. It's the elephant in his cupboard. Is that it? Skeleton in the cupboard. If that's rolled out, you'll knock them off their pedestal. In any event, folks, this is what to say to my countrymen in Ireland, and indeed in the north of Ireland, or whatever they want to call it. It's coming to the north. I cannot see it being avoided in Northern Ireland, but it'll be a test to see what the unionists do. I would put an incentive on diesel and petrol cars. I'd reduce the taxes, and when you buy a new diesel or petrol car, I'd give you a £5,000 grant towards it. €5,000. That's what I would do, but I won't be doing that. So you see how they're hitting the ordinary man every way they can. Keir Starmer's a rip-roaring communist, but in fairness, Rishi Sunak before him was every bit as bad. Now, have I explained that fairly well, and I'll be back to you soon again. There's a creeping reduction of every year, so that when we get to 2030, you have 80% of all car sales electric vehicles. There's no incentive or anything else. It doesn't matter whether there's charging points or not. It doesn't matter whether there's electricity to charge them. Where is the electricity for 80% of cars going to come from to charge them? That's why if they were made to do the SEA directive, you'd throw this all off for a long time. None of us would ever see it resurrected again, because there isn't enough intelligence in the entire United Kingdom to do an environmental report on energy or transport. They're too thick, they're too stupid. That's all they are. Now, it's essential to understand that in the UK, under this legislation, hybrids will not be included. I'll do a separate video on hybrids. Richard Bruton, as I say, was on, the radio was on here in Ireland. Monaghan, Cavan and Roscommon have the lowest uptake of EVs in the country. But it's very important for listeners and for people who want to be informed to make the distinction between a fully electric car and a hybrid vehicle. They're two totally different things. This legislation in the UK is for fully electric. And I can only say to people in the UK and in Ireland, no matter which part of Ireland you're in, this is coming. Because not only are they getting at the law to stop the sale of cars, they are getting at the car makers themselves. Ford is in problem. Ford has problems. Ford is stopping making its EVs and is thinking of stopping making all cars. It has destroyed them. So this is why you'll get them on the assessment if anyone has the money and the courage to tackle them. Good luck. We'll see you back for something else. Good luck. Bye.